Hi and welcome back. Ollie here at the Crafty Whisk. It's another fun fold card today, a double Z fold. And the stamp sets I'm featuring are all from Clearly Besotted. This one's a horizontal Z fold. So you can sort of see how it works there. Really fun and interactive. And this one's a vertical one. Same concept, a little bit different. So let's get stuck into it. I start off with a single piece of cardstock, normal cardstock, which is 11 inches by 8, and I score it at 2 3/4 and 5.5 along the 11-inch side. And now I'm going to be cutting this down on the 8-inch side. I'll be cutting it at 4 1/4 and then remove that piece and then again at 2 1/2. The stamps that I'll be using first is the one Under the Sea, and I'll also be using Water Plushies and Balloon Bunch C. I'm just measuring the stamp set there, the little lineup of critters, to make sure that I am cutting this the correct size. So this size doesn't really matter what you cut it at, as long as it sort of fits your theme, basically. The first piece here, which is the main card base, I am folding on the 5.5-inch score line and then fold back towards you on a 2 3/4, and that forms a Z fold. And it's the exact same thing with the other piece. So fold it in half at the 5.5 and then fold it back towards yourself on the 2 3/4. And then all you need to do is place it opposite, and that's how it's going to get glued down, like so. It forms a little box in the middle, and I will be showing you another version of the double Z fold which utilises that space in the box as well. Alrighty, so I'm going to be working on the skinny strip first, which I'm going to call the inner piece. And I'll be stamping the main image from the Under the Sea. And I'm using Memento Black because it's Copics safe, and I will be doing some Copic colouring on this one. I love how it's the whole scene already stamped out, ready for you to go. Really like that. So now, before we do any colouring, I'm going to be doing some ink blending. So I have made a mask using the Gina K Masking Magic. I love this stuff. It actually holds up really well to multiple uses, as you saw in my previous video where I did 20 cards and only used the one mask. This image is a little bit tricky. It's got like little fiddly bits, but I got there in the end. And I've put an extra cat, or I cut the cat bit off so that I could ink blend in between. There's a small gap there. So I'm just putting the cat on separately, or yeah, it's a mermaid, but it's a cat. So I'm not sure what you'd call that one. And then I'm just going to use the foam domed daubers. And I've masked off where the fold is in the card. And I want it to be an Under the Sea sort of scene. So I am only using the one colour of Distress Oxide for the water, and that is Salty Ocean. And then for the sand, I'll be using Antique Linen. And I'm I've got my project on the mini waffle flower stencil mat or media mat. You've seen me before just use ordinary copy paper underneath. I've also got a magnetic station which I use. It really just depends what I grab first. They all do the same thing. So you don't have to spend lots of money on this sort of stuff. Alrighty, so we'll remove the mask and see what we end up with. Just want to make sure that it worked properly. And it did. Pretty happy with that. So now I want to have the scene continually moving along the card. So I'm making my own mask here. Now, if I had have thought about this a little bit more, I would have gone halfway down the low tack tape instead of up the top end. You'll see why in a moment. It does create a little bit of an issue for me, but we made it work. And this is the Heavy Doodle low tack tape. I like that it's nice and wide. So I'll do the water first. Which again is just using the salty ocean. I probably would have been better using copy paper underneath because my little media mat is quite small and this length of card is quite long. It's 11 inches long. So that's the water component, and now you'll see here is where I ran into a little bit of strife. I needed a bit more thickness to mask off the water portion so I could do my sand. I made it work just by putting another piece of the low tack tape over it, but if I had have just cut it from the center of the piece of low tack tape, it would have worked out a lot better. I only had 2 of these cards to make, so it wasn't a big deal. So I've just got to be a little bit gentle going over it because it's such a skinny little strip of low tack tape. And it's not the end of the world if some of the antique linen does go into the blue because the blue is the darker anyway, and I can just go over it again. That's the beauty with oxidings. They sort of layer on top of each other. So there we go. That bit's done. And I'm just going to cover up the little white marks that the burnishing causes when you fold it. So I'm going to be putting the mask back on now because I want to add a little bit of interest into the water and the sand. So here I'm using tea dye and vintage photo, and I'm just popping them onto an acrylic block, which I will then spritz with water quite generously. And this bit's for the sand. I want to create texture in the sand, so I'll be using a little paintbrush and going into that and then just flicking it onto the sand. And I've realised that I need to cover up the water as well. So the masks come back and I cover up the water. And by flicking it onto the sand, you're creating depth. And it actually will make it look like grains of sand rather than just flat brown. And you can use any ink or paint to splatter on here. It doesn't have to be Oxides. It's just what I had in front of me. And I'm using a fine paintbrush because that gives me nice fine little spray dots. Now I'm also going to use some watercolor paint, which is Gansai Tambi Starry Colors, it's called, from Kuretake. I will list it in the description below. These are beautiful, beautiful paints to work with. And they add a little bit of a metallic sheen. And then because it's oxide or distress in general, it is water reactive. So I've just given a couple of squirts of water and then just wipe it up or dab it with a paper towel or a cloth. And that will create little water droplet sort of effect. It's a bit hard to see what has happened there with the effect, but in person it was really, really cool. Now I have fast forwarded, or sorry, put this on high speed so you don't just sit through a lot of colouring with me. But I thought I would show you the whales because I actually did a blue base coat, which I didn't know if it was going to work or not, and I really, really love how it turned out. So the whales, the base coat is B21, and then I've gone into the shadows with neutral 4 and neutral 2. And it just gives a nice, like an underlying blue tone to the whales. I found it quite striking. And I've also added some little dot effects with the N2 and N4 so that it looks like it's not a completely smooth skin, like it has had a little bit of a, you know, like hippos and elephants, their skin isn't totally smooth. The same sort of thing with whales. They have little nicks and cuts out in the ocean, so the little dots just help show that it's not totally smooth skin. So the little Mercats, that's what I've decided to call them, I've done in like a ginger cat. So I've done them with the YR07, YR16, YR14, YR31, and the cheeks is R20. And I've done them with 2 different colour tails. One is in the blue greens and the other one is in the RVs. So pink and teal basically. Just because I wanted a little bit of a pop of colour. I thought there was just too much blue happening, which is why I brought in the RVs or pink basically to sort of make it pop a little bit. And I've also added the pink to some of the accents, like the little seashell hair pieces and the little bit of coral at the back. And also the little starfish. And I think that's a little pearl that Mercat is holding, but it's going to be a pink pearl. It's all good. Now the little, now I keep calling them whales, but I think they're like narwhals or something. I've just gone back to the metallic watercolor paints and painted their horns in gold. And I'm just going to add the little white accents with a Posca white pen. You can also use Sakura gel pens if you've got those. Anything that goes on white, basically, for the little highlights here and there. And this Posca pen is a 7mm thickness one, so it's a little bit thicker. I was just trialing it because we get them at Officeworks here very easily, whereas the Sakura can be sometimes a little bit tricky to find. These two images are from other stamp sets that I have. So just shop your stash. It is still Clearly Besotted that I've used, but shop your stash, see what you've got. And because I cut them out on the scan and cut, they came out with a little bit of a border. So I've just gone over it with the Copic pen, which is almost an exact match for the Salty Ocean. I'm trying to think what colour it was that I used. Of course, I haven't written that down, have I? I think I just experimented pretty much with the colours that I had in front of me as what was going to be the closest match. So it depends what oxide ink you use as to what sort of blue you use around these little images. But you can see it really helps. It makes them blend into the background and not stand out from the background, which I really liked. And I'm just gluing everything straight down. I'm not adding any dimensional products here because the way the Z fold operates, I really didn't want to add any bulk so that it wouldn't close properly. And you can kind of see there a little bit of a glistening in the middle section underneath the two little fishies. That's the metallic watercolour paints. And those ones that I'm just putting down now, the shells, I went around them with a pale brown Copic. And now I'm going to use some white pigment ink. And I'm just got some little air bubbles. And I'm just going to go around and stamp air bubbles here and there. It goes on very stark white, but it does dull down a little bit. I love that little seahorse. He is adorable. And now it's time for the sentiment. And it just says, "You're simply fantastic." So it can be for a birthday, it can be for encouragement, it could be for a friend, it could be for anything. So that's the middle section done, or the inner section. Oh, no, it's not. I tell a lie. I'm going to add some black glaze. I felt the cat's whiskers, or Mercat's whiskers, kind of disappeared. So I'm just re-adding those in. And this is a really, really nice glaze pen. It makes the eyes pop out as well. Stand out, I should say, not pop out. You know what I mean. Because we can't have whiskerless cats. So now we're going to start the assembly. I've just got some pattern paper here from Lawn Fawn. And it's their 6x6 pad in stripes and sprinkles. And I've cut 2 at 4 inches by 2.5 and 1 at 4 inches by 5.25. So the 5.25 one's the one I'm putting down now. And the 2.5 ones go on those on the left sides there. And if you're going to use decorative paper, you do need to put it on now before you assemble the whole card. Otherwise, it's really tricky. So I'm pulling out the antique linen again, and I'm just going to go around the edges of the card. I felt it just needed a little bit of finishing. It was very stark white, and this will blend it in. It makes it a little bit more rustic, and it blends it into the sand a little bit better. So I go around all the edges, and then I also fold the card and do the inner edges as well, because they will be seen. And it just adds that finishing touch to the card, like you've really thought about the card. Alrighty, so now the assembly. The easiest way I have found to assemble it is to stick down the right hand side of the inner piece to the right flush to the edge of the right hand side of the main card. Now you can put it up, down, central, whatever your design is doing. And then I fold the card up, and you can see that it kind of meets, the two folds meet, and you only want to put glue on the very left hand side, because if you glue any further, your card won't open. And that's how it works. Super easy to do and really effective. So now we're going to work on the other one. And I'm using a coloured base card, and it's 11 inches by 4 1/4. Scored at 2 3/4 and 5 1/2. The inner card is 10 inches by 3 1/4. Scored at 2 3/4 and 5 1/2. Now that's just the sizes that I'm using for the inner card. It can be whatever height you want it to be. It can be just a tiny, simple, thin little one, or it can be wider than what I've used. It doesn't really matter. It's whatever your idea or concept is. So again, folding it in half on that 5 1/2 score line, then folding it back on itself on the 2 3/4 to form your Z fold. And the same thing with the inner one. Now the inner one is not 11 inches, so it's not going to meet flush in half. It's going to kind of be an odd sort of size, but it still forms a Z, and it does still work. It just won't go to the edges. You'll have a border around it. And I've tried to do my measuring so the border is an even border all the way around. Now I've pre-coloured these in, so you wouldn't have to sit through watching me. And this is the Your Move from Clearly Besotted. And I think I might have I missed the other one. The Mercat and the Narwhals is Telling Tales lineup. There's also a dragon and princess scene in that stamp set as well. I love this one because it came with the chessboard background and the little critters holding chess pieces. Now I've coloured them in shades of dark grey and pale grey to mimic the white and the black. But you can do whatever sort of colours you want really. And I'm using 2 stencils to create the background. The first one is from Clearly Besotted, and it's called Tiny Town. And I'm just going to be using the clouds from the Kindred stamps one. So here I'm just working out where my little township image needs to be. And also making sure that I've got the inner piece of card going the correct direction. The Zs are going in the correct way. And I'm just going to use Distress Oxide again. And this one is, I think it's chipped sapphire. And I started with the foam domes, and it just wasn't cutting it. So I've just gone to the, what am I calling it? Yeah, the blending brush. And I forgot to mask off up the top, so I have got an oopsie above my little township. but that's okay because we will fix that at the end. So now to do the clouds, I am using Tumbled Glass, the Distress Oxide, and going over the edges of the clouds really faintly. You just wanted, or I just wanted to mimic a nice spring or summer day. So I've just gone over it very pale. Now you can do it darker if you want, by all means do. You can make it into a stormy day by using a grey tone instead. You could make it pink, like a sunset. Now the grass, I'm using Mowed Lawn and just checking against the Copics that it matched pretty well, because just the edges of this will be seen. I didn't want white cardstock to come out from behind. I wanted it to be green. So I just need to do just the side bits there. And that's done. So the assembly is similar but a little bit different. I was trying to figure out the easiest way to assemble it. And then I got distracted. I thought, oh, I better do the sentiment first, because otherwise it's going to be too tricky to do, because the sentiment I'm actually going to do in the middle section. And if I had have waited for it to all be assembled, I would have had a bit of a time trying to do it. It wouldn't have been impossible, but it would have been a bit trickier. I'm sorry my head gets in the way. There's little grid lines in the front of the Misty, and that helps me to line up, making sure that it's nice and straight. And for sentiments, I will generally use the VersaFine because it's a nice crisp black ink. Right, so I can assemble this now. So I'm just seeing that I've got a nice even border going all the way around. Glue is my preferred method. And I've just got my fingers there where the glue needs to go down to. We don't want to glue too far because the card won't open. And my two inner fold lines of the blue card and the white card are almost sort of touching each other. It's a bit hard to see on here. And then the back bit, it's nice and easy. You just basically fold the card nice and flat. Then I just opened it up a little bit and give it a good burnish. Making sure there's no glue where it shouldn't be, and it works. So it's all good. And now we can stick all of the little decorative elements on. Again, I'm just going to be using glue and sticking them straight down because I don't want any bulk on here. On this front section that I'm doing now, you can put bulk if you want to, but on the inner bits, it will impede the way the card opens and closes. So here I'm just sort of choosing what I want to go where, and I didn't want any of the critter to be hanging out the side because it does get seen when the card is closed. So I've just chosen a smaller one. And this set really appeals to me. I used to play chess a lot growing up, and my son got really heavily into chess. He was involved in a chess club and all that sort of thing. Probably most of primary school and some of high school. And he used to go every week to chess club. And I've been waiting and waiting and waiting for a stamp set to come out that I really liked. And of course, he's 27 now, so he's no longer going to chess club. That's, you know, not the done thing these days. I think he's outgrown it a little bit. He still plays chess online, but he doesn't actually go to a chess club anymore. But I tell you what, when he was in primary school, he could whip the pants off of all of us. He was very clever with it. So there we go. That's the card essentially done. But we do need to fix that oopsie. I don't know if you can see it. The ink did cover it a little bit, but there is 2 dark blue spots there because I didn't mask off the stencil. So I've just cut a really small sentiment. It just basically says hello, and I've put a little tail, a fish tail on it, so it looks like it's just a banner there, and it hit it. It doesn't look out of place. It looks pretty good. So let me know what you think in the description, in the comments below. I think these worked out really, really pretty. And it's 2 different alternatives for you to try, a vertical and a horizontal. And please like and share and subscribe, all that sort of stuff. And I'll see you next time. Thanks, guys. Bye.